And here we are, boys and girls. Neoncast 21. Coming to you from a secret secondary location. My schedule's been kind of erratic, and so I decided to not wait and just knock this out in this other location. Been a while since we've gathered. Once again, it's been a couple of months. I know I haven't been very regular with these, unfortunately. But, yeah, you know, things and stuff. But, I don't know if this is the best way to, like, break this news, even though it's not exactly news. You know, I'm considering maybe starting a kind of Patreon in order to put these out more regularly. I mean, I'm not looking to get rich or whatever. I just think that maybe that'll both motivate and give me the slight extra push that I need to do this on a regular basis. My schedule's a little busy, and being able to, you know, either make some form of income or even maybe just invest that towards, like, you know, maybe better equipment or, yeah, like basically stuff that'll help me do this regularly. But that's neither here nor there, and that's in very early stages of conception. I'm not even actually doing it yet. I'm just thinking it through. So, we'll see. But if that does happen, then maybe you can expect these on a more regular basis, and maybe an expansion into topics that I haven't covered thus far. Maybe in a separate kind of set of things. Like maybe this will be the Neoncast, and maybe I'll do another thing that'll be devoted more to, like, politics, or not exactly politics, because I don't think I'm ever going to just talk about stuff like, you know, the Supreme Court nominees or this or that House race. I just mean, you know, social current events, if you will, just because it's a more regular source of content than, you know, what movie I saw or what show I saw. And even when I do, I don't always have enough comments to, like, base a video off of. I mean, if you've seen, I've done a couple of, like, shorter form ones, like for Blade Runner or for Dunkirk, just because I didn't have enough material to fill, like, a 45 or hour long block, and didn't feel like covering news or secondary topics. Anyway, that's it for this intro. As I said, there's not a lot of news. I mean, you know, Comic-Con just happened recently, and there were a bunch of trailers. Some good, some not as good. I kind of thought Glass was interesting. I'm kind of semi-excited about the idea of, like, an M. Night Shyamalan, like, weird superhero universe that's totally original, both in terms of, like, the property, you know, like, it's not some kind of adaptation of DC or Marvel Comics, but also the idea that because it's so weird, it isn't really tied down by tropes or normal things that, you know, regular quote-unquote comic book universes are sort of, like I said, tied down to. So that seems kind of excited. Another sort of cinematic universe-related one was Godzilla King of Monsters. Again, looks perfectly fine, and I mean, that's maybe underselling it a little. I thought it was pretty cool. I like the music they chose. It wasn't like bram bram dramatic. It was more like ethereal almost. And I like Millie Bobby Brown. Yeah, again, Godzilla King of Monsters, cinematic, a cinematic universe that makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense obviously because it's giant monsters. I mean, it makes sense to make some kind of interconnected or you know, series of movies that are kind of tied together. Also, what else did we have? You know, we had some, like, Aquaman. Again, sure, I guess. You know, lots of underwater stuff. It's kind of like Phantom Menace, Gungan City. It's a little Black Panther. It's a little Thor. But but his story is kind of similar. He's comes from like a kingdom, and there's like this like archaic structure of society, but it's also technologically advanced. Yada yada. And it looks like it could be fun. Who knows? And Shazam, which actually looks fun, kind of gave me Big vibes. Someone even said that they really hope they do like a floor piano gag just to kind of throw it back to Big. But I do like the ideas behind it. It does seem more genuinely fun and not just like fun because we gotta make this fun because people like Marvel movies and they're fun. So yeah, I guess well, properly executed, that could be a really enjoyable movie, I think. And then there was the Venom trailer that wasn't Comic-Con related. That just came out the other day. I was very unimpressed by it. First of all, I have this like rule of thumb that any trailer that's longer than 2.5 minutes to me signals lack of confidence in the product, because there's this obsessive need, like we got to show this and we got to show this and we got to explain the plot in relatively great detail. Otherwise, people won't be enticed to go see this if they don't know exactly what they're going to get. And I think they made that mistake, like in Batman v Superman. They put out so much footage and stuff before that nothing was surprising, nothing was interesting, and we're going to get to that in Mission Impossible 6 or Fallout, whatever you want to call it, in a minute, because I feel like they didn't do that. They cleverly left some stuff out of the trailer. And when it happened in the movie, I was like, oh, this is great. I didn't know this was going to happen. So, but we'll get to that. Anyway, Venom included a lot of stuff. It didn't feel particularly appealing to me. There was another thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't remember right now. We said Venom. Oh, so Disney looks like they've bought Fox, or at least are in like the final deals of it. I think the shareholders have approved it. I think there's no opposition from whatever regulatory bodies are in charge of this kind of thing. I don't remember at the second. Is it the FEC or something like that? And there's also rumors about them scrapping New Mutants and X-Men Dark Phoenix, which are, essentially done. They're both done shooting, certainly. I think New Mutants was like practically just finished, like a finished product. And I think they're just going to shelve both of them. And you know what? I don't blame them, because I think that a big misstep that they would do trying to bring the Fox properties, X-Men and the Fantastic Four, into the MCU would be to start off, the first thing that they'll put out under the Disney brand will be these two movies that are not testing particularly well, are of an off-brand, because they're obviously going to like recast some of the X-Men. They're going to do their own thing. And so you probably don't want to get off right out of the bat tidying up like closing all those corners that the Fox purchase left open. It's pretty crazy that movies with like casts like that. New Mutants has like Maisie Williams, and it has Anya Taylor-Joy, like up and coming stars. And Dark Phoenix obviously has, like Sophie Turner and all the people who were like in Apocalypse and the other movies, and those movies made money. They were not super well loved or whatever. But yeah, that's a pretty gutsy, ballsy move, I think, but the right creative choice, I think. Might not be the best business choice, because you want to exploit your brand, and you have these movies that are already made. It doesn't cost Disney a dime to put these movies. That's not true. They got to advertise in them. But generally speaking, like relative to other things, they could put these out for real cheap and, maybe make a buck or two off of them. I heard a lot of different theories about what they might do with these. They might shove them on some streaming service. They're going to have their own Netflix, Disney, at some point. They're gearing up for that. So yeah, maybe at some point we'll be able to see those movies, but like I said, I thought at that point they were beating a dead horse with the X-Men over at Fox. I think it kind of ran its course And I do think that Marvel are going to avoid this. That's why they were talking about like, oh, everything's going to be different after Phase 4. You know, maybe the tendency to remain vague about what's going to happen next is not just about like Infinity War spoilers, but also about how, you know, this Fox purchase has been in the works for a while, and so maybe the time has come to pivot slightly away from like the Avengers and that stuff and into a little bit more of X-Men. And then keep it fresh, not keep, you know, hammering us with the same characters over and over again. I mean, again, I'm going to have to point to DC. And even before the DCEU, go back in time. Batman, more Batman. And then Superman and Batman and Superman. And now Joker, Batman was in Suicide Squad and Joker was in Suicide Squad. Now we're going to have a Joker origin movie, 2 Joker origin movies, the one with Joaquin Phoenix and then the Martin Scorsese one. They're harping on the same characters. They're trying to mine the same stuff, and audiences now have both the variety and the sort of intelligence, the knowledge of these universes and of comic stories and stuff to understand, to recognize that that's what's happening. That they're trying to get blood from a stone, which I said about Star Wars in the last episode, and I'm going to use that metaphor that I'm not even sure is correct because I don't know if it's water from a stone, blood from a stone. But anyway, they're trying to do the same thing, and I think Marvel might have a golden opportunity to give the Avengers a little bit of a rest. You know, maybe not abandon it completely. Like, I think we could definitely use another Thor in the vein of Ragnarok. I know Guardians 3 is... We haven't even spoken about the James Gunn firing. Oh my God. We're going to get to that in just a second. So we know that they're not just like going to kill them all off and walk away, but maybe take their foot off the gas in terms of the Avengers and slightly pivot towards X-Men, which maybe might also even save you the need to like try to figure out how to squeeze all of them into the same reality. And so, yeah, that brings me again to the James Gunn firing. Like I said, politics, social politics, not going to really discuss it here right now because it's, you know, this isn't that kind of thing. But it just has to be mentioned that he was fired immediately because of some old jokes that he made. And now the entire cast put out an open letter supporting him, calling to reinstate him. Again, politics aside, I hope that happens. I personally think that things that you said years ago are not as potent a reason to disassociate yourself with someone as stuff that you say right now, especially if you've shown yourself to be a better and different person than you were years ago. But more than anything, I just think that his creative touch, his mind is the thing that brought us Guardians, which I love so much. And I've followed his career since before Guardians. I've always liked James Gunn stuff, even though in recent years I've kind of grown to dislike him personally, again, because of politics and less politics and more conduct with regard to politics. I just find his expression of his politics a little obnoxious. But I still went to bat for him in a pretty serious way because I do think that ultimately the fans of that franchise of Guardians are the biggest victims of this, and I think that a lot of the people who tried to get him fired are not fans of him or of that. And so, you know, I'm not as eager to see their wishes come true and him just remain outside of the MCU. And I do hope that maybe once the dust clears a little bit and if there's enough public support for him, they might reconsider. And I do think that would be a better business choice and also a better like fan-oriented choice. I do feel like the fans, the people who really love these movies and buy the merchandise and the movies themselves and go see them and stuff, I think most of them are willing to move on from that. Like I said, especially considering how he came about addressing these old things that he did. Anyway, on that note, it's been about 15 or so minutes. So I think I can start talking about a Mission Impossible Fallout. And in fact, make this a little more about the second trilogy of Mission Impossible films. I mean, we can talk about the Mission Impossible franchise just for a second. I mean, it just occurred to me watching Fallout that I'm a big fan of Mission Impossible. I'd never really thought about that. You know, like I'm a big fan of Marvel. I'm a fan of Star Wars. Maybe not a big fan as I used to be. You know, there are franchises that I can easily look on and go like, yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Never occurred to me that I was a big fan of Mission Impossible until I sat down again over the weekend. I watched Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation in preparation to watch Fallout, which I watched yesterday, which was Tuesday. And they're great. I mean, 3, again, we're going to go back to the early ones in a second. I'm just talking about these last 3 are just, they're just joyous. And I believe Brad Bird directed Ghost Protocol, and then McQuarrie directed Rogue Nation in this. And like I said, they're just joyous. They're like master classes of like popcorn action, spy action schlock. Like they have the perfect mix of like action, you know, like shooting, punching, driving, flying, explosions, cool tech gear, interesting like complex convoluted spy plots, and humor, all in really good proportion. And the action is all intense and really tactile and gritty and real. And, you know, a lot of it comes down to Tom Cruise doing all his stunts, actually putting himself in legitimate risk to give it this like extra little push. And I know Tom Cruise is a controversial figure, and I have friends who can't really have a hard time or can't flat out can't overlook his personal conduct and his, you know, involvement in Scientology and all these stories that came out about his marriage to Katie Holmes and other incidents in the past. And you know, I understand that. I don't think I have any any complaints about people who feel like he's too creepy or too skeevy to enjoy in that way. For some reason, it's not as hard for me. I was trying to think about why, and I think that he's still acceptable in mainstream Hollywood circles. And I know that he's a big star and he brings a lot of money. But again, I think that if a video came out of him, you know, slapping his wife, he's not married right now, but like, you know, slapping his wife or yelling racial slurs or something like that, his career would definitely be over. It's, or at least, you know, damaged horribly for a long period of time. It's just that all or the vast majority of the negative and the creepy stuff that we know about him, we know through sort of unconfirmed sources. But look, I don't doubt that a lot, if not all, of the creepy stuff we heard about Tom Cruise and Scientology is true. You know, I've watched Going Clear, and I've watched Louis Theroux's Scientology movie, and I've watched some of Leah Remini's stuff. I know about Scientology, and I also know about the role that Cruise played in Miscavige's, you know, plans or programs or whatever. But we have to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Is like I said, all of this is like people telling us stuff that we heard, blind items and stuff like that. Like I said, I don't doubt that a lot, if not all of it, is true. But, you know, it's not conclusive enough to have harmed his standing and his ability to make movies that people want to watch and enjoy watching him in them. And so, I don't know. Like I said, I feel myself able to overlook that stuff more easily than if he were, you know, like I said, Mel Gibson admitting that he beat his girlfriend and you know, screaming at her and yelling racial slurs and getting arrested and yelling at the cops. That's a little different. But as I said, if somebody feels uncomfortable, if somebody looks at him and just sees a creep and doesn't want to, you know, contribute to his fortune or whatever, you know, like I said, I don't I don't have any complaints about that. Anyway, like I said, these trilogy, Mission Impossible 2 is essentially the only one of these that isn't good. That's flat out not good. There's some good stuff in it. There's some good visuals. There's some good action shots. It was directed by John Woo, and he knows how to do action. Unfortunately, he was kind of pigeonholed into his John Woo-isms in it, like, jumping while firing 2 guns and doves in slow motion. And so it comes across feeling a little like Woo cliche, but like I said, it's the only one that's like overall not good, and I think it was because they took a misstep in what the franchise should be. And basically what happened was they hired John Woo and they said, make up some action sequences and we'll write a story around it, which you don't have to be a big, movie expert to know that's probably not a great, it's not a great way to work. But they course corrected. They course corrected rather beautifully with Mission Impossible 3, which also was a good example of Tom Cruise putting his faith in young talent. J.J. Abrams, that was his first big movie, and it's like a $100 million movie. Not a lot of people in Hollywood will take a chance like that. Although now it's become a little more commonplace, where like the MCU or Star Wars will take like an indie director and give them a big movie. But back then that was not a sort of a common practice. And so, yeah, the first one was like this sort of seminal spy movie, and it had that iconic hanging from the ceiling scene that has turned into like a cultural meme. Not a lot of movies can stake that kind of claim, like, oh, I invented something that's so instantly recognizable. It's been mocked a bazillion times, and like everybody knows it. And then it slowly ramped up to the point where in these movies it's like, that on acid or on crack, or pick your cliche drug here, on steroids. But it doesn't feel CGI ridiculous. And I don't mean that in the sense that like CGI effects are, inherently make something look ridiculous. They sometimes do, but that I'm going to compare this to the Fast and the Furious movies for a second. I think they're a good point of comparison. They're both franchises that started, small with this one movie that people liked and was enjoyable, and then kind of stumbled a little later, but then course corrected and also ramped it up way intense. Like the first Fast and the Furious movie is a movie about underground racing and an undercover cop who is embedded in this like world of underground racing in order to arrest a ring of thieves that use their driving skills to commit crime. That's it. Kind of small-time movie about small-time criminals. By the time you hit the 7th, the 8th movie, they're like trying to capture nuclear weapons and jumping out of planes with cars and driving away, running away from submarines on ice sheets and like doing like international spy stuff, which is fine. I don't mind that. Like, and people love it, right? But it's gotten absurd in a less satisfying, a less realistic way, and realistic is a weird word to use in relation to both of these franchises. But it still feels less real to me. The ridiculousness is a little harder to ignore in the Fast and the Furious movies than it is for me in the Mission Impossible movies. That's just my taste. I know other people maybe have different tastes. I like the tech better in Mission Impossible. I find it easier to believe that the agents in Mission Impossible can do the things that they do than I can that the people in Fast and Furious can. And yeah, and I just think the Mission Impossible ones are just generally better made movies, and are, probably the best example from the past, 20 years of like how action now should be done. I mean, you can look at like Mad Max Fury Road, which is another good example of that. But like I said, tactile action on a big scale that uses modern techniques to give it that extra shine, that extra push, but still doing it the old cool way, with Tom Cruise weaving in and out of traffic on a motorcycle. It's clearly him. He's not wearing a helmet, and he's, weaving in and out and clearly doing this for real in legitimate danger. Makes it exciting and tense. And the rest of the cast really good. I thought Henry Cavill was great. I totally understand why they wanted him to have facial hair. I'll touch on that a little in spoilers. But just generally, I just felt that it fit his character, and, sorry, Justice League. I get it. It didn't feel silly to me that he had facial hair in it, which could have, because it could have felt like just for no reason, like, oh, look, he has a mustache and stubble. But it actually makes sense. Obviously, Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg, the whole sort of comedic chemistry dynamic that they have worked really well in this. I kind of miss Jeremy Renner. I thought that he would have been good in this, but there was no real role for him to fill. Like Henry Cavill kind of fills that role in this, and he was also pretty funny. He has good comedic timing. I kind of like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which did not do well, and is not a great movie, but I thought that his comedic timing in it was pretty good. Sean Harris, which is the villain who carries over from the last movie. Rebecca Ferguson, I like her a lot. I think she's a good counterpart to Tom Cruise. I think she also sells the character of a seasoned veteran agent who's been around for a few years and isn't just like this young, super hot, where you don't understand, oh, she's a ninja and a hacker, and how did this happen? She looks 22. I mean, Rebecca Ferguson is obviously drop dead gorgeous, but also sort of exudes that experience in a way that just some chippy, wouldn't have, I think. Like, I like that they cast, and let me just quickly see how old she is. So she's 30, she's like 35. And like I said, I think that's way better than casting someone who's 25 in this role. Both, like I said, is sort of a foil to Tom Cruise, who's like a seasoned agent, and also just like I said, it's good to have like a woman like that who sells that idea of like, it feels like she can do all this stuff. Anyway, Alec Baldwin is good. Angela Bassett is good. Like I said, there's no real bad performances in this. I thought the music was good. Like I thought it was shot amazingly. There's a couple of scenes in it that I'm not really sure how they got the camera shots for it. These like long takes of him running across rooftops, jumping between roofs, car chases through Paris, crazy fist fights, all that stuff. Really recommended. I'm going to go into spoilers in just a minute. I'm just trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to say that was like non-spoilery. There was one shot in the trailer of him like driving towards like a jackknifing truck in the woods. And, like it cuts like right as they impact. That's the last shot in the trailer. And I kept waiting for that to happen, and it didn't. And then I went and I looked at the trailer again, and they just took a shot of him inside a helicopter, which, happens. There's a helicopter chase. They just took a shot of him inside the cockpit and like superimposed this like car crash on the outside. And nothing even remotely similar happens. That was kind of funny. That was the first thing I said to my friend when the movie ended. Like I turned to him and I said, like, what happened to the jackknifing truck? And it wasn't just me. A lot of people noticed that. But I thought that was kind of funny. And you know what? I actually don't mind that. I don't feel like it's a bait and switch. I actually feel like putting stuff in the trailer that's kind of exciting and just gives you a general idea of the vibe of the movie and then just isn't in the movie. That's good. Because then you replace that with other stuff. Like I said, there was plenty of stuff in this movie that you don't see in the trailers at all, or maybe, brief glimpses that are so brief that you don't really know it's going to be like a sequence. Like the entire end, I feel like very little of it. You see the shots of them in the helicopter, but that's not all. There's like a whole other thing going on there that you don't see at all in the trailer, I think. So yeah, go see it. I loved it. I loved, like I said, I've discovered that I'm a big fan of the Mission Impossible franchise, which I guess I knew, but I never really considered it like that. And so I'll take a 5 second, not five, I'll take a brief respite and then talk spoilers. All right. So basically, you know, the plot of this continues right on from the previous one. And is, you know, you don't really need me to describe the plot. There's a nuclear weapon. They gotta get rid of it. Blah, blah, blah. I liked that there was some old schooly Mission Impossible stuff in this. Like, it starts with a really classic Mission Impossible fake out the bad guy so that he gives you the information scene, which I thought was quite brilliant. And like halfway through it, I realized what was happening. Because and the funny part was, it was because Tom Cruise acted in a way that Ethan Hunt would never do, like pretend to kind of like lunge at him and have Ving Rhames like hold him back, like, no man, it's not worth it. I was like, Ethan Hunt would never do that. And then I thought to myself, oh, I know what they're doing here. And then they pulled a little switcheroo. That was great. And then they did that again later at the end to get Henry Cavill to admit that he was the bad guy. And then I also, like, I had this little light bulb. I was like, man, that was so great. It also proves once and for all that Wolf Blitzer is literally fake news, which is kind of funny. But yeah, you know, it has that in it. And as I said, it has a number of really impressive action sequences. It has that bathroom fight where Cruise and Cavill are just getting their asses handed to them by this martial artist. And, you know, Angela Bassett said that Ethan Hunt is a little more like a scalpel and Henry Cavill is more like a hammer. And I really like how that theme kind of goes throughout the movie. That's also why I think facial hair works well for him. He's this like bulldog. His tactics are always power. No finesse in Henry Cavill. And I just think that the sort of the bearded look really fits with that attitude. And so in that bathroom fight, it's like Ethan Hunt, who's like a semi, you know, has some kind of like special forces training, Cavill, who's like a brawler, and this bad guy who's like a martial artist, and he just kicks their ass, like both of their asses, which was really satisfying. I liked that. I liked the idea that, you know, sometimes you meet somebody who's better at hand-to-hand combat than you. You're not the best person in the world in it. And then they had, you know, and even before that bathroom fight, that jump, that skydive, that halo jump they did was real. That shot of the cameraman walking backwards down the gangplank and like jumping off the plane and Tom Cruise jumping right after him, that's one long uninterrupted shot. And during the movie, I thought to myself, wow, they really shot that. I don't think that was fake. And I was right. They really did it. Like I said, stuff like that really sticks out to me as impressive, and it not just because I'm, you know, somewhat of like a movie geek in terms of that, like in the technical aspects of movie making. It's just more exciting to me. It feels like I'm in the thing. It feels more in the moment. And so yeah, there was that skydiving segment, the fist fight, the car chase in Paris, the motorcycle chase in Paris that turned into a car chase in Paris. You know, him chasing Henry Cavill across the rooftops in London, the helicopter chase, then the fight on the cliff with the falling helicopters that were hanging by the wire. That was the thing, by the way, that I was saying that we didn't see any of in the trailer, including the fight between Rebecca Ferguson and Simon Pegg hanging and them trying to defuse the bombs. Just really, really great action, spread out throughout the movie. Like they were peppering them in. I kept thinking like, oh, wow, there's like a big variety of action stuff that happens. And like I said, it's kind of spaced out in a well-paced way. I also liked the end part with the diffusion of the nuclear devices, where you don't see that he succeeds. You only see them cutting the wire at the last second, hoping that he got it. And then they have this like 5-second fake out where you think maybe it went off. And then you see that he's holding the little detonator thing in his mouth. That was awesome. I noticed that sometimes these movies deliberately don't show you something. Like if you go back to Ghost Protocol, the scene where he's climbing the Burj Dubai, which I think is still the highlight of this entire franchise at this point. he's doing it in order to get into like a server room and switch a thing in a server room. And they totally skip over that part. They don't show you what he does on the server floor. He gets there. It cuts back to the room of them doing other stuff. And then he's jumping out the window to go back down to the room. They're like, he did the thing. You don't need to see that he did the thing. Here they did it for a different reason. They did it for like tension reasons. But I thought it was clever, and I don't think I've seen that before, where like it cuts away from the hero at the moment where he's supposed to do his most heroic thing, just to keep you tense for, an extra 30 seconds. That's a pretty clever movie thing that I kind of wish I saw more of. Maybe not a replication of this trick, but something similar. I think that could work really well. Looking over at my clock, this episode is going to maybe be a little short. Like I said, I'm coming to you from a secondary location, so I don't got my regular stuff in front of me to maybe extend these a little more. But I still think Ghost Protocol is the best Mission Impossible movie. And I think Rogue Nation and this are sort of comparably right after it, followed immediately after those by 1 and 3. Those are kind of, I think, my 3 tiers. You got like 4 at the top. Below that, you got like 5 and 6, and then below that 1 and 3. But like I said, other than the second one, that's just a big mess and weird and tries too hard to be cool. They're all pretty great. They're all pretty great. It's impressive that both, like I said, both this and Fast and Furious are able to make these many sequels and not only not, like stumble and fall, but kind of come into their own, gain momentum. Credit to Tom Cruise for, like I said, not giving up on Mission Impossible after the second one didn't do well. Fast and Furious had 2 movies that nobody really liked. I mean, nobody really liked Too Fast, Too Furious. And then Tokyo Drift was this whole, I remember when that came out, I was like, okay, here we go, direct-to-video, 15 direct-to-video sequels coming after this. Tokyo Drift, it's like a spin-off, kind of. But, like I said, they stuck with them. And this kind of, it's funny, this kind of brings me back to thinking about James Gunn being fired. Maybe sometimes a quick reaction is the wrong move. Maybe sometimes, even if something bad happens, even if your movie flops, even if your director gets into trouble, maybe sometimes a little patience and a little stick-to-itiveness and a little persistence can turn things around for you. I mean, there's endless anecdotes about this. Cheers, one of the most successful sitcoms ever, took it like 2 seasons to even get any ratings. Seinfeld was unpopular when it first started. New things, it takes a while to figure out what it is that people like about new things. I think that in Mission Impossible 2, like I said, they misjudged what it was that people liked about Mission Impossible. But having those 2 data points, here's a Mission Impossible Mission Impossible movie that people liked, and here's a Mission Impossible movie that people didn't like. Let's try to do more stuff like the first one and less stuff like in the second one. Although the stuff that like they did in the second one, which was the more crazy action kind of stuff, they faded that back in the fourth one. They just didn't, like I said, they kind of avoided the John Woo clicheism by not relying on a director's like classic visuals for it. They kind of broke out on their own and set the bar. I mean, this is the bar for action, for large scale action that isn't, comic booky and whatever. And I got to keep going back to this and saying this. The realism of doing this stuff for real is so apparent and people notice it. Even random, regular movie-going audiences realize it. And, Bond 25, which is now in production with Danny Boyle, the Bond movies do it a little. Like, they do some of this, like, really tactile stuff. And those are the best parts. I thought that whatever the last one was called, Spectre, I thought like maybe perhaps the best part of it was the opening sequence, which was this long shot of him on roofs, and he changes clothes quickly as the camera pans around. It's this really, really well-made sequence. And like I said, the fact that it was really done like that in camera is impressive, and I think your brain notices it on almost a subconscious level, even if you're not the kind of person who sees a long take and is like, I'm watching a long take. I've said before that I think that if the camera doesn't cut, 15 or, in like 15 or 20 seconds, my brain switches to long take mode, and then I'm like, oh, let's see how long this goes. And as I said, there's a couple of shots of him running on rooftops. There's this one particular one where he's running across this like catwalk thing, and the camera starts alongside him on the left, and then pans around to his front and around to the other side and around to the back. And there's nowhere to like drive a truck or have a gantry, and it's too close to have been an aerial like helicopter shot. Maybe they had some kind of aerial track that they then deleted, like erased in post. I don't know. But it's beautiful that you see this shot that's real, and you're like, I don't know how they did this invisible camera kind of thing. Just a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Like I said, the humor was good. The action was good. Everything was good. All you got to do is ignore the slight ridiculousness of like, none of this makes sense. Everything works too perfectly. Things that you think are going wrong, you discover were like totally part of the plan. Everything's very convenient. They hang lampshades on it often. They're talking about when they're defusing the bomb. Should we cut it at 2? Why not cut it at 1? You want to cut it that close, but then we're wasting a second. That's very lampshady. And I like that sometimes the tech fails. Like I said, Ghost Protocol is the mission where everything goes wrong. The reason I like it the most is if you think about these movies as like a show, like the TV show, where every movie is like, oh, it's a mission. I imagine them like reminiscing about missions and saying like, oh, remember that one where everything failed? None of our tech worked. Everything got messed up. That's Ghost Protocol. It happens a little bit here and there in other ones. Like in this one, the mask machine doesn't function because Henry Cavill smashes the martial artist guy in the head with it and breaks it, which I later theorized might have been on purpose. Like he might have been trying to sabotage the mission. The phone breaks, things here and there fail, but in Ghost Protocol, it's like everything, nothing works. And I think that's really fun. It makes it unpredictable. And it also, like I said, it kind of diminishes the sense that everybody's invincible a little, and it's also really a fun aspect of these movies. Like, how do they deal with the fact that things go wrong? And so, yeah, that's my, I guess, ringing endorsement of not only Mission Impossible Fallout, but also, the entire franchise. And on that note, I think I'm going to close this off-site episode of the Neoncast, number 21. I am Neontaster on Twitter, at Neontaster. The Twitter account for the podcast is at Neoncast. The YouTube channel where these get posted on is youtube.com/c/Neontaster. I often do streams on Twitch, not as often as I used to. But that's over at twitch.tv/Neontaster. I did a Nier Automata stream a little while ago. I might do some more of that. And if you have any questions or comments that are longer than a tweet, feel free to email them to neoncastpod@gmail.com. This has been episode 21. Thanks for listening, if you have been listening. And if not, then why am I talking to you?